I want you to picture a place that really, truly defines isolation, but at the same time produces a spirit that's, embraced all over the world.
It's a place of contrasts.
It really is. It's wild, it's wet, it's just stunningly beautiful, but it's also, it is overwhelmingly lonely.
You're on the Isle of Jura.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
A storm-battered piece of land way out on Scotland's west coast, just northeast of Islay, the powerhouse of peat.
And that proximity to Islay is so important. But when we talk about isolation here, we are speaking in really dramatic statistical terms.
Okay.
The key numbers, they really tell the story. This island is home to only about 175 people.
175.
But they are outnumbered by the wildlife in just a spectacular way. There are over 5,000 majestic red deer roaming the hills and the coastline.
5,000 deer.
Yeah.
And 175 humans. The scale of that is almost mythical, isn't it?
It is. It's this magnificent isolation. And the infrastructure, well, it reflects that.
You've got one single road.
One road.
One pub. And the bank only visits once a week.
It does. It arrives in a bus that sort of doubles as a branch office.
So the question we're really diving into today is not just what spirit is born here, but what kind of will is required to craft a globally recognized whiskey from that level of, magnificent isolation.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we've taken a stack of your sources, historical accounts, detailed production notes, and some really deep-tasting profiles, and we are zeroing in on the Isle of Jura single malt whiskey.
And our mission is, I think, pretty ambitious. We need to fully uncover the unique identity of this Inner Hebridean malt. We want to understand the history of its deliberate reinvention in the mid-20th century.
And the technical decisions that really set its flavor profile.
Right. And also how it manages to balance this deep community connection with the demands of a global spirits market.
And here's the initial and I think essential insight you really need to carry with you throughout this entire deep dive. Jura sits geographically, literally next door to Islay, an island known across the globe for producing the heaviest, the smokiest, the most, profoundly medicinal peated whiskeys on the planet.
And geography in that part of Scotland, it usually dictates flavor.
It's almost a rule.
Yet the Jura signature style, particularly in their core range, is, it's approachable, it's fruity, it's light, and it's balanced. It's elegant, not aggressive.
Which is the paradox.
It is. Jura consciously and deliberately defied its geographical neighbors. And that single decision, made over 60 years ago, defines everything about their production methods and their brand identity today. It's really a study in strategic contravention.
It's a fascinating story of going against the grain.
Okay, so let's unpack this isolation, because it isn't just a marketing tag, is it? It is the fundamental raw ingredient for everything that follows.
Absolutely not. The location is, it's more than just scenic. It's brutally remote.
So we're looking at a small island, part of the Inner Hebrides, right off the Scottish west coast.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, the geography is characterized by its roughness. It's storm-battered, it's frequently windswept, and that raw maritime climate is just inescapable.
You can't get away from the ocean.
Never. And this constant exposure to the Atlantic air and the salt, that is a physical influence on the maturation process. It results in that distinct mineral, salty undertone that, seasoned drinkers can identify, regardless of how light the spirit starts out.
And those incredible statistics of isolation, they really bear repeating, because they highlight the fragility of the human element here.
They really do.
We're talking about 5,000 red deer, often visible right from the distillery, dramatically outnumbering the 175 inhabitants. That's a ratio of nearly 30 to 1.
It's hard to even picture.
It is. And the minimal infrastructure, the one pub, the one road, that isn't some quaint detail. It's a reflection of life lived on the very edge of the map.
And that reality makes the distillery's presence even more vital. The Jura Distillery is not some large multinational entity simply operating a remote site.
No, it's the heart of the island.
It is the island's single largest producer, located right there on the beach in the tiny, singular settlement, Craig House.
It's the engine of the community, really.
Yeah.
It's been operating, with interruptions, but since 1810. Its current form, though, is the lifeblood of the island. It's absolutely essential for the survival and identity of that small local population.
Right. The whiskey isn't just from the island. It's intrinsically tied to its economic and, cultural continuity.
Which is rare.
It's very rare. And that intrinsic connection means any major decision, whether it's about production or expansion or brand direction, it's all filtered through the lens of community stability. That is a rare constraint in the global spirits industry, and I think it makes their success story even more remarkable.
But Jura's extreme isolation didn't just create ideal conditions for maturing whiskey. It also appealed to one of the 20th century's most profound thinkers, George Orwell.
That's one of the most compelling pieces of Jura's heritage. It's just a fantastic story.
It really is.
Orwell, whose real name was Eric Blair, was seeking profound solitude after World War II. He relocated to Barnhill, which is this remote farmhouse on the northern tip of Jura, in 1946.
So this is right after the war.
Right after. And it was here, in the middle of this dramatic wild landscape and far, far from the noise of post-war London, that he wrote his seminal novel, 1984.
I find that juxtaposition just fascinating. Jura is a place of absolute transparency, rugged freedom, total solitude.
And yet
it gave birth to a novel about absolute surveillance, control, and the death of privacy. Did the bleakness of the surrounding landscape inform the tone of the book?
Oh, it absolutely did. I mean, the island is known for its intense weather, its challenging landscape, its genuine sense of remoteness.
So that struggle with nature.
That kind of solitude and struggle with nature certainly provided a dramatic, isolated backdrop for a story about humanity's ultimate isolation under tyranny. It's an incredible link. It ties the island to a massive piece of global cultural history. The very concept of Big Brother came to life right there.
And the distillery, very smartly, doesn't let that history go unnoticed.
Oh, they lean into it.
They weave this literary legacy directly into the whiskey portfolio itself, most famously, and I think most collectively, with their 1984 vintage release.
Which is a brilliant piece of branding. It anchors the whiskey not just in geography, but in this profound cultural narrative.
It's more than just branding, though, isn't it? It gives the whiskey a weight, a seriousness that few other island malts can claim. It says, this spirit was born where modern dystopia was conceived.
A powerful statement.
Okay, so let's move from the profound solitude of Orwell to the dramatic industrial solitude of the distillery itself. We need to focus on that moment that the modern Jura was born.
This is it. This is the turning point for the entire Jura identity. The original distillery, first set up in 1810, had sadly fallen into complete ruins.
No, it's just a shell.
A total ruin. Production ceased entirely in the mid-20th century. For years, the abandoned buildings just stood there as a testament to the island's struggle to sustain any kind of industry.
But the community fought back. This rebirth, this phoenix moment, it wasn't driven by some anonymous corporate entity from far away.
No, it was local. It was driven by two local landowners, Robin Fletcher and Tony Riley Smith. And that local commitment, it just speaks volumes about the island's determination to keep this tradition and, more importantly, the economy alive.
It must have been a massive, courageous undertaking.
Huge. I mean, the entire island population was shrinking and aging, and the reestablishment of the distillery was seen as the crucial intervention necessary to attract younger families and sustain employment.
They were essentially staking the future of the island on this one project.
That's exactly what they were doing. And that rebuild was an engineering feat in itself, especially given the location. They hired the renowned engineer William Delmay Evans to design the new equipment.
And this is where that strategy of defiance we mentioned was physically built.
Precisely. Delmay Evans faced incredible challenges, just think about it. Transporting massive copper machinery across the choppy Sound of Islay, and then maneuvering it onto that one single road in Cray House.
Just getting it there must have been a nightmare.
But the most crucial decision he made, the one that determined Jura's fate forever, was installing exceptionally tall stills.
Okay, I understand the thinking behind it. Move away from Islay's style. But given the incredible logistical difficulties of getting any equipment to Jura, why compound the problem by ordering stills that must have been, over 40 feet high? Wouldn't shorter stills have been cheaper and just so much easier to install?
It was a strategic commercial choice that required, technical boldness. They calculated that they just couldn't possibly compete with the established, heavily peated giants like Lafargue or Ardbeg right next door.
You needed a niche.
They needed a niche, so they ordered tall stills, reportedly among the tallest in Scotland at the time. And this massive height created a physical barrier to the heavy, oily compounds that produced that peat smoke flavor. It guaranteed the new Jura spirit would be light, clean, and elegant, rather than heavy and aggressive.
So if they hadn't made that deliberate, conscious choice back in 1963, enduring the expense and the logistical nightmare,
what would Jura be today?
It might just be another also ran in the Smoky Island malt category. Instead, they carved out a unique, approachable identity that respects the location but completely defies the local flavor tradition.
A masterstroke, really.
We've established that the tall stills were the key decision in 1963. Now let's dive into the liquid mechanics. What does a tall still actually do to the liquid on a molecular level?
Well, the process is called reflux, and the physics are essential here. When the fermented liquid, the wash, is heated in the still, the alcohol vapor rises.
Right.
But along with the alcohol, you have heavier compounds like congeners, aldehydes, and esters, some of which contribute to heavier, oilier flavors, including, of course, smoke.
And those heavier compounds are exactly what Jura wanted to minimize.
Exactly. The taller the still neck, the more time and distance those heavy vapors have to travel. As they rise, they cool near the copper walls, they condense, and because of their weight, they fall back down into the boiling wash.
So it's a constant cycle.
It's a constant cycle. This process is called reflux. This cooling and falling back ensures that only the lightest, cleanest, most volatile alcohol vapors manage to complete the journey and make it over the swan neck and into the condensers.
Ah, so it acts almost like a purification filter while it's distilling? The longer the journey to the top, the lighter and cleaner the spirit that eventually makes it into the condensers. It's essentially a high-tech filtration system driven by gravity and heat.
You've nailed it. The height ensures maximum copper contact for a longer period, which also strips out unwanted sulfur compounds, contributing further to the spirit's clean character.
Okay, and contrast that with Islay.
We'll contrast this with the short, squat stills of many Islay distilleries, which are designed to promote minimal reflux. They want to retain those heavy, oily compounds necessary for their iconic, phenolic, smoky profile. Jura literally engineered their spirit to be the antithesis of their neighbors.
So the raw distillate flavor profile reflects this efficiency. The sources consistently describe the initial spirit, the new make, as having these bright notes of citrus, pear, and green apples.
A very bright, fruity, almost delicate foundation. It's the perfect canvas.
The ideal spirit for later cask influence, I'd imagine.
It is. It can take on the deep flavors of sherry or red wine without those wood influences being masked by heavy smoke or oiliness. In terms of sheer output, the distillery operates with 2 wash stills and 2 spirit stills, and they achieve a solid capacity of around 2.5 million liters annually.
Which is the necessary scale to support the island community while still maintaining those traditional high-stilled methods.
It's a balancing act.
If the stills provide the elegance, then the water must provide the purity. Given that they are on an island defined by peat bogs, how do they manage to keep their water source so low peat?
This is another one of those deliberate choices that's tied to their specific geography. The water comes from a specific spring known as the Balliol Margaid, and it's sourced from Loch Pale Margaid.
And the key detail.
The key geological detail here is that the water flows primarily over hard, rocky ground and granite, rather than over deep peat bogs, which are common everywhere else on the island.
So the water avoids being naturally infused with that high level of phenols and organic material that characterizes the heavily peated malts.
Exactly. It contains only low trace levels of peat, which contributes to the spirit's clean, light character. This ensures the base spirit isn't inherently smoky before it even hits the still.
So any smoke flavor that eventually appears in the bottle is introduced later?
Right. It's typically through the use of specific peated malt batches or maybe through the residual charring of the casks themselves.
Okay, so the water is clean, the spirit is light. That means the entire complexity of the Jura portfolio must be built almost entirely through wood management.
That is the defining philosophy. They achieve balance through a really carefully orchestrated cask strategy. The essential maturation relies primarily on American bourbon casks as the foundational aging vessel.
And bourbon wood gives you what?
It provides the essential vanilla, the sweetness, and the structural backbone of American oak.
And that foundation allows them to get truly experimental and layered with the finishing process.
Precisely. They rely heavily on various sherry casks, Oloroso, Amoroso, and different wine casks for finishing to build that deep complexity, the color, and the mouthfeel. By starting light with the distillate and finishing rich with innovative wood types, they create a product line that can satisfy someone seeking an approachable dram while also offering the depth an enthusiast craves.
For all their technical defiance of Islay's peated style, though, they can't defy the Atlantic Ocean. That island malt effect must still be present.
Oh, it is absolutely crucial to the profile. You can engineer the spirit to be light, but you cannot engineer out the environment of Cray House.
The salt is in the air.
The Barse climate, the constant salt-laden maritime air, it permeates those beachside warehouses. The humidity and the temperature swings influence how the spirit breathes in and out of the oak.
And that results in what exactly? In the final taste.
It results in a distinct, almost intangible, salty mineral undertone in the finished product, regardless of the cask type. It's often described as a subtle tang of sea spray or minerality. It connects the sweet, fruity notes with the reality of the island location.
So even if the spirit isn't heavily peated, it definitely tastes like it has weathered the sea.
It does.
And I love the story about the packaging reflecting this resilience. The bottle itself speaks to the challenge of just getting the product out of Jura.
It's a wonderful detail. It tells a story of commitment to utility over pure aesthetics. The iconic bottle shape, characterized by its wide base and sturdy structure, wasn't chosen just for its look.
It was practical.
It was designed to be robust and durable enough to withstand the roughest of journeys required to get the cases loaded onto the infrequent ferries and transported off that remote island home and into the wider world.
So the bottle itself embodies the resilience required to thrive in such an isolated location.
The story of the bottle is, in a way, the story of the whole island. Tough, reliable, and capable of enduring the elements.
Now that we understand how they built the spirit, let's explore the final product. The Jura core range, that really sets the global standard for their approachable style.
It does. The aged core range, the 10, the 12, the 14, and the 18-year-olds, they're praised for being fruity, balanced, and highly drinkable. They make an excellent entry point for new whiskey fans without sacrificing complexity for seasoned drinkers.
Let's start with a benchmark, the Jura 10-year-old. This is matured for 10 years in ex-bourbon barrels, and then it gets a sherry finish. That combination of American oak sweetness and European oak spice is a classic for a reason. But what does the Jura process specifically bring out?
Well, the notes are described as rich and full, which is remarkable for a 10-year-old. It suggests the bourbon barrels were active and the sherry finishing was pretty substantial.
Okay, so what am I tasting?
You'll find nectarine, ginger, and fresh ground coffee, which is a hallmark of good sherry influence. But then you have that subtle smoke, that crushed pepper, and dark chocolate that speaks to the delicate balance between the tall, still lightness and the island environment.
So it's balanced, but it's far from simple.
Not at all.
Moving up to the Jura 12-year-old, we see the cask influence getting even more focused. This is aged for 12 years in ex-bourbon, but it's finished specifically in Oloroso sherry casks.
And Oloroso is a dry, nutty, oxidized style of sherry. It doesn't contribute the pure sugar sweetness of something like a PX, a Pedro Ximénez. Instead, it imparts incredible richness, color, and a nutty depth to the whiskey.
So what does that give us?
Here we find notes of rich, dark chocolate, walnut, and citrus fruit. The key flavor markers, though, are licorice and that incredible combination of salted bananas paired with brown sugar.
Salted bananas. I have to stop you there. That is possibly the most beautifully specific and slightly ridiculous tasting note I've ever heard.
Yeah.
How does the palate actually reconcile salted with banana and brown sugar?
Well, that note, salted banana, is a perfect micro-summary of the Jura identity.
Yeah.
The banana and brown sugar come directly from the bourbon and the fruity distillate, while the salted element is that inevitable maritime influence from the ocean air that surrounds the warehouses.
So it connects all three dots.
It connects the fruit base, the sweet maturation, and the island reality into a single, memorable, evocative flavor. It's all there in one taste.
That's powerful synthesis. Finally, in the core range, the Jura 18-year-old, which completes the richness cycle by introducing a red wine cask finish.
The red wine cask finish significantly deepens the character. The 18-year-old is described as rich and full-bodied, and that red wine finish seems to amplify the dark fruit character. Think heavy tannins and deep sugars.
So we're talking about notes of caramel, tropical fruit, and cinnamon.
Followed by dark berries, chocolate, and a luxurious lasting finish of espresso coffee. This expression really shows how that light-based spirit can handle 2 decades of maturation and intense wood finishing, moving from a bright distillate to a complex dessert dram.
If the core range is about demonstrating consistent balance and maturity, the cask additions are where the distillery really shows its innovative side, proving that light-based spirit can adapt to almost any wood type.
This is where they fully exploit their wood management philosophy. They use these NAS releases, no age statement, to demonstrate that age isn't the only measure of complexity.
And for anyone less familiar with that term, NAS just means the whiskey doesn't carry a specific minimum age on the bottle.
Right. And they choose this route for experimental blends because it allows them the flexibility to mix different age whiskeys to achieve a specific flavor profile without being restricted by the youngest whiskey being only, say, 10 or 12 years old.
Let's start with the most extreme example of this experimentation, the Jura 7 wood. The name tells you exactly what the focus is here.
This is a masterclass in complexity through wood blending. It starts with the required American white oak ex-bourbon barrels,
The foundation.
the foundation. But then it undergoes an extensive finishing period across 6 additional varieties of virgin French oak. We're talking about Limousin, Trancé, Allier Vosges, Jupille, and Les Betranges.
That is an astonishing variety of oak, particularly for French oak, which is known for its high tannin content. Why go to the trouble of incorporating 6 different French oaks?
Well, each of these specific French forests provides wood with a slightly different density and grain structure, and that imparts distinct tannins and flavor profiles.
For instance,
Limousin oak is often used for cognac and brings finesse and spice, while Trancé offers more structured, powerful vanilla and clove notes. By combining them, they avoid the overly tannic sharpness of a single virgin oak finish, and instead they create this highly complex, seamlessly layered structure.
the resulting tasting notes have to reflect that density.
They certainly do. You get coffee, ginger, chocolate, licorice, candied orange, and the striping note of caramelized peach.
Caramelized peach, I like that.
The French oak is delivering spice and structure, but the underlying bourbon and spirit notes are providing the fruit. And crucially, that persistent maritime undertone ensures it still tastes like a product of Jura, even with all that European oak influence.
We also have the Jura American Bourbon Cask NAS, which strips the complexity back to the essential maturation, focusing purely on the influence of American bourbon barrels.
This one is designed to highlight that light, fruity base spirit. The notes here focus on fresh and ripe citrus fruit, vanilla, and salted caramel. It's a pure, clean expression that shows the versatility of the new make spirit before heavy finishing.
And then the playful finishes continue. The Jura Caribbean Rum Cask, NES, is a fascinating choice, finished in select Caribbean rum casks.
And that finish brings a textural element that is completely different. The rum cask adds a layer of molasses and tropical fruit sweetness. It results in a smooth, creamy mouthfeel with notes of mango, sweet citrus, and vanilla spice.
It seems like it would lean heavily into those lighter distillate notes.
It does. It highlights the pear and citrus that the tall stills were engineered to create.
So the common thread across all these cask editions, whether it's the rich Spanish sherry of the winter edition or the bold wood of the 7 wood, is that the light-based spirit from the tall stills is exceptionally receptive to deep wood influence without becoming overwhelmed.
That's the key to their whole portfolio.
It is essential, though, to continuously connect all this global production back to the reality of that small island. This is why the distillery actively highlights its cultural tie-in.
That relationship is absolutely fundamental to the Jura brand narrative. It's rare to see a global brand so intrinsically linked to the exact population count of its home.
A powerful example is the 212 release.
Exactly. It was explicitly named after the island's population count at the time of its release. It's an immediate, tangible tie back to the human element. The idea is that every bottle is a toast to the specific number of people keeping the island and its traditions alive.
It really emphasizes that the distillery isn't just an employer, it's a co-creator and, in a way, a guarantor of the island's identity and future.
And this community commitment extends to local business integration, recognizing the tight-knit nature of Jura, where survival really depends on mutual support.
And we see active collaborations mentioned. The distillery works closely with Lusa Gin.
Right, which produces a handcrafted island gin distilled with local botanicals grown and foraged right there on the wild coast. They literally share the environment.
And they also collaborate with Deer Island Rum, a small batch, handcrafted Scottish spiced rum made right there on the Isle of Jura.
This isn't just cross-promotion. It's an ecosystem of craft spirits, all operating in the same wild landscape, all relying on the same logistical chains and infrastructure. It reinforces the image of Jura as a unique, self-sustaining hub of artisan production.
Moving into the collector's corner, this is where Jura's history and commitment to long-term maturation truly shine. These releases are not just expensive whiskeys. They tell the story of the island across decades.
Let's start with the landmark bottle. The Jura 21-year-old anniversary release. This was specifically created to mark the 200th anniversary of the distillery's founding in 1810, and it was released back in 2010.
A 21-year maturation period demonstrates incredible patience, especially for an island distillery that went through such a major rebirth in the mid-century. But there is a fascinating finishing detail here that directly links back to that 1963 rebuilding effort we discussed.
Yes, this is a beautiful piece of storytelling in a bottle. The maturation details confirm it was aged 21 years and finished in sherry casks, but specifically they mention using a Gonzalez Baez Oloroso sherry cask from 1963.
From 1963.
From 1963, think about that for a moment. The finishing cask itself dates back to the very year the distillery was rebuilt, the year the tall stills were installed, and the modern spirit was designed.
That cask is a physical piece of liquid history. It acts as a direct link between the original founder's vision and the 1963 visionaries who rebuilt the island's economy. The flavor profile is described as incredibly rich and complex, having a distinct vinous character.
It demands slow contemplation. The extensive notes list honing, toffee, nougat, nuts, citrus, cherry, rhubarb, dried berries, cardamom, saffron, licorice, walnut, peanuts, and bitter chocolate. This depth of flavor proves the endurance of that light base spirit.
It shows that the clean, fruity distillate, given 21 years and then finished in historical wood, transforms into something profoundly layered, celebrating 2 centuries of tradition.
It's a tribute in every sense.
And then we have that specific literary tribute, a nod to the island's most famous, albeit isolated, resident, the Jura 1984 vintage.
This bottle speaks directly to George Orwell's time there. It was matured mainly in American white oak and given a finish in Amoroso sherry casks.
And it's important to note the difference there. Oloroso is dry and nutty.
Right, whereas Amoroso is a medium-sweet style of sherry, often blended with some Pedro Ximenez, which contributes a rounder, sweeter depth.
The flavor profile is pure nostalgia and richness, fitting for such an iconic year. On the nose, you find honey, vanilla, ginger, peach syrup, and banana cake.
And the taste follows with roasted pineapple, bitter chocolate, and those distinctive morello cherries. It is one of the most rare, historical, and iconic releases in their entire portfolio.
These special releases illustrate a crucial point. The light, elegant base spirit handles long maturation and intense cask influence exceptionally well, allowing it to maintain its freshness over decades while absorbing the profound richness of the wood.
And it's something we can see confirmed when we look outside the distillery's own bottlings.
We often look at independent bottlings because they offer an unvarnished, high-proof look at a distillery's spirit. They showcase a versatility that the official, often lower ABV releases might not capture.
Independent bottlers are essential for the enthusiast. They buy specific, unique casks directly from the distillery and bottle them at their own discretion, often at cask strength, always without chill filtration or added color.
It allows us to taste how that tall, still distillate behaves when stripped down to its absolute essentials, without the distillery's specific blending goals. So let's analyze a few examples from the sources, specifically concerning the choices made by the bottlers. We have the Jura 2009-2022 Adelphi Selection, a 13-year-old bottled exclusively for Denmark at full cask strength, an incredible 55.1% ABV.
Matured entirely in a sherry cask. Number 7072, this shows the profound impact sherry has when bottled at that high strength. Bottles like Adelphi choose high ABV because it allows the consumer to taste the liquid unadulterated.
So you're getting notes that might be masked when water is added for standard bottling.
Absolutely. At 55.1%, you are tasting the sherry influence, the spirit structure, and the oak tannins with maximum force.
And how does that pure cask strength sherry experience compare to, say, the official 12-year-old, which is bottled at 40%?
The official 12-year-old, while complex, it prioritizes approachability and smooth balance. The Adelphi is all about intensity. You get an explosive nose and a much thicker, oily mouthfeel that carries the sherry notes of dried fruit and spice far deeper into the finish. It's a completely different expression of the same base spirit.
Then there is the truly unique Jura 23-year-old The Chestmalt Collection B2, 1998-23-21. This was part of a series of 32 different bottlings representing the actual chess pieces, making it ultra-rare, only 157 bottles.
And what's fascinating here is the sheer age, 23 years, and the specific maturation vessel. A hogshead refill bourbon barrel. A refill barrel, having been used multiple times, exudes a slower, less aggressive wood influence.
Well, through 2 decades, what character does a refill bourbon barrel impart?
It allows the spirit itself to shine. It preserves the delicate, fruity character of the tall, still distillate while slowly softening it over time. The profile offered notes of tropical fruits, light smoke, and nuts.
So it proves that the Jura spirit is incredibly resilient. It maintains its freshness and fruity core even after 2 decades in refill wood.
Which proves that the elegance designed in 1963 persists.
And finally, the Jura 21N 2022 James Eady, an 11-year-old small batch release.
This bottling utilized both first-fill bourbon and refill barrels and was bottled at a more approachable 46% ABV. By blending first fill, which gives that aggressive vanilla and sweetness, and refill, which has a softer influence, they found a sweet spot of maturity.
And the 944 bottles they got confirmed the spirit's versatility.
It shows that Jura is a truly adaptable distillate. These independent bottlings confirm that the base spirit is a strong character that simply serves as a versatile conduit for its cask journey.
So after this comprehensive exploration, from the 5,000 deer to the 40-foot stills, what does the Isle of Jura identity truly boil down to?
Well, if we synthesize everything we've discussed, the history, the logistical challenges, the defiant process, and the dynamic portfolio, the Jura identity is defined by three powerful concepts: defiance, community, and time.
Defiance. Because they consciously built high, purifying stills to run counter to the heavily peated style of their geographical neighbors, establishing a light, clean base spirit that creates its own category in the Hebrides.
Community, demonstrated by the local landowners driving that crucial 1963 rebuild, and celebrated in releases like 212 and their essential collaborations with local businesses like Lucid Gin and Deer Island Rum, ensuring the distillery is an anchor for the 175 inhabitants.
And time, which is evident in the patience required for their long history, the complexity found in their 21-year-old anniversary releases, and the deep, rich character they build through relentless, innovative cask finishing.
Exactly. The light, fruity base spirit is merely the starting point. The complexity comes almost entirely from these sophisticated finishing techniques: the 7 woods, the rum, the oloroso, the amoroso, the red wine.
It is the definition of a single malt that is entirely the product of its environment, not just its ingredients. The distillery's continued existence is tied directly to the community's ability to reimagine and reinvent after falling into ruin.
Every single bottle is a testament to that persistence, to enduring the isolation and the logistical challenges year after year.
And this leads us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over as you seek out your next dram.
Given that the brand is so closely tied to the island's magnificent isolation, its profound literary history, and the survival of a small, specific population of 175 people,
How much of the whiskey's character is truly the taste of the spirit itself? That clean pear and citrus distillate engineered by the tall stills? And how much is the powerful story of the island?
that's a great question.
If the community decided tomorrow to change the water source or lower the stills, the Jura we know would cease to exist. The story, in this case, might not just be as important as the liquid.
It might be the very element that grants the liquid its value and identity. What stands out to you? We hope this deep dive helps you find the answer and gives you new appreciation for the spirit born of defiance and deer.